How's everyone today? Good? See that maybe we're getting into spring here. I'm guessing, I'm going to predict that the last couple days where it got cold, I think that's hopefully our last cold weather for the winter, and then my guess is it'll probably warm up from here, but we'll see. It's been an unpredictable year for weather. Okay, so anyhow, I thought we would start with we would have two articles. I was reading the newspaper today, and both of them, you'll see what I do for the second one. They're kind of related to each other, but talking about happiest. You know, people talk about how happy they are, which is to me a very sometimes it seems kind of hard to define what that means. But anyhow, they have a way to measure how happy people are. So here it says Taiwan remains second happiest in East Asia, okay, according to reports. So let's kind of see what that means, how they rank that or how they decide that. So the first sentence here says, Taiwan ranked 31st in this year's World Happiness Report, released on Wednesday, coming second in East Asia behind Singapore. Okay, so that kind of surprises me. I'm actually surprised that Singapore is the happiest country in Asia. Not that it's not a happy place, but I don't know, it just surprises me a little bit. So we talked about these words before. What does rank mean? Yeah, so rank can have different ideas to it. It can be your position, right? So let's say there's a 比赛, right? Competition, and we say he was ranked third in the competition. It means he's third place. But it could also mean, if you have like this, a survey, right? Or some sort of 调查, and you can say, which rank is it? You know, what Taichung often ranks number one in Taiwan for quality of life. Okay, people say the 生活水准 or whatever it's called is number one in Taiwan sometimes. So we say it has a first ranking or it's top ranked. But rank can also mean something else. If you are in the, for example, the army, the military, you know, if you're in a Junren, you might say, what is his rank? It means what is his, sometimes on the soldiers, they have the ranks on their shoulders or on their shirt there. It says, are they an officer? Are they a private? Or what's their position? So this word rank gets used in many different ways. I will tell you, rank has a completely different meaning, though. There's another word, and I don't know if we've ever another meaning that we've never talked about before. It's completely different. If you say that is something is very rank or it smells rank, does anyone know what that means? Okay, rank can also mean a very sour, stinky, smelly smell, something that smells bad. Okay, so if you say a rank odor, often I hear that word. Often they'll use those two words together. I mean, you could say smell. You could say a rank smell, but often for some reason it tends to be the word odor. I guess we could say the word smell. Okay, so if we say there's a rank odor in this place, it means a stinky or bad, unpleasant smell, okay, or a rank smell. So rank also has that meaning, completely different. It's a 形容词, but it just means unpleasant or stinky or something like that. Yeah. Okay, so let's say it together. Rank. Rank. Okay, so let's read this together. Taiwan ranked 31st in this year's World Happiness Report, released on Wednesday, coming second in East Asia, behind Singapore. Okay, so it says here, the annual World Happiness Report, launched in 2012 to support the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, is based on data from the U.S. market research company Gallup, analyzed by a global team now led by the University of Oxford. Of course, Oxford's a very famous university in England. Okay, so this report is supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We talked about this before. What does sustainable mean? If something is sustainable, this is a word we hear all the time today around the world. We talk about sustainable development or sustainable goals or sustainable. Yeah, it means that it's something that you can continue, okay? Now, of course, sustainable development means it's development that's sustainable. It means it's something that we can, it can last for a long time because it's a healthy growth. Maybe you could say it's growing in the right way. But if something, sustainability often refers to it's environmentally friendly. It's like there's 环保, there's an aspect to that. Or it's done in a right way. If it's not done in a correct way, then that growth becomes what? What's the opposite of sustainable? Unsustainable. So we add a UN. And if something is unsustainable, it means it can't go on. We can't keep doing the same thing. It doesn't last. It won't last. I just used the word, sometimes if we say something can go on for a long time, we say it has, I don't know if we've ever learned this word before. Does everybody know longevity? Okay. Have you seen that word? Okay, so longevity can mean many things. It could be your life. You can say there's longevity in his family. Okay, it means in his family, for some reason, people live a long time. So longevity is something that most people hope for, right? They hope that they'll have a long life. But longevity can be used to describe, a plan, a goal. Now, this is a noun, a 名词, okay? You have longevity. Okay, or we can say we hope for longevity. Okay, so it means something that goes on for a long time. Let's say that together, longevity. Remember, the G here is pronounced with a J sound, not a hard G. So again, longevity. Okay, and then this word, sustainable. Sustainable. Unsustainable. Unsustainable. Right. So if somebody's doing something, you're like, there's no way they can keep doing this, or there's no way this is going to last. We say, look, that's unsustainable. You have to change. You have to do this differently. Okay. So this is based on data or data. Remember, I said that word, you can pronounce it either way, data or data, information from the U.S. market research company Gallup. Now, this is a very famous market research company. They do a lot of polls around the world, but especially in the United States. Okay. So let's read this together. The annual World Happiness Report, launched in 2012 to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals, let's say it again, Sustainable Development Goals is based on data from U.S. market research company Gallup. Analyzed by a global team now led by the University of Oxford. Oxford. Yeah. I think our former mayor, Jason Hu Zhiqiang, didn't he go to Oxford? I think he did. I think so. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so it says people in 143 countries and territories are asked to evaluate their life on a scale from 0 to 10, with 10 representing their best possible life. Okay, so this is how they do it. So 143 countries, that's a lot of countries, and territories, of course. So I guess if you were looking at, for example, maybe Hong Kong, you might say, well, that's a territory, or I don't know, there's probably some other places like that. They're asked to evaluate their life, okay? Now, what does evaluate mean? Yeah, that's a very good word. Yeah, to look at the value, but I think assess is probably one of the best words. So when we assess something, it means we look at it and we decide, if it's, I think I'm spelling that right. But yeah, so if you want to turn that into a noun, it becomes an assessment, right? Evaluation, okay, that could be a TION, same thing. But what's the most common assessment or evaluation in school? That is a what? Yeah, on what? We report card, but I think taking a test, right? Any kind of examination or test is an evaluation or an assessment of your knowledge, right? How much did you learn or you're learning? So it's a good word when we evaluate or assess something. So why don't we say this together? Evaluate. Evaluate. And then as a 名词, evaluation. Evaluation. So that's evaluation. Okay. And then this other word, assess. Assess. Assessment. Assessment. Yeah, so those are both good words to know. So they were asked to evaluate their life on a scale. Of course, so scale, is like a range. If you say on a scale of, people say this all the time. They say on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is this? What do you think? And people say, oh, well, people say, well, 0 is bad and 10 is good. But often people say that on a scale of, and then they'll give you some numbers or range sometimes. I guess you could also say on a range, R-A-N-G-E, on a range. It's like a scale from one number to another. So on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10, of course, being the best possible life. Okay, they're the happiest. This is the best. Okay, so let's read this together. People in 143 countries and territories are asked to evaluate their life. Let's say it again. Evaluate their life. On a scale from 0 to 10, with 10 representing their best possible life. Okay, and that's a photo caption. So below it says, results from the past 3 years are averaged to create a ranking. Taiwan this year ranked 31st globally with a score of 6.503, behind its ranking of 27th in last year's report. Okay, so it fell a few places. But so it says here, results from the past 3 years are average. And what's this word average mean? Yeah, if we say Taichung has an average of, I read this once, an average of over 250 days of sunshine per year. So average means 平均, right? Okay, so average can be a noun or it can be a verb. You can say, I want to average this out. Okay, so here it's a 动词. They averaged these results from 3 years to create a ranking. So they don't just look at 1 year, they look at an average of 3 years. Okay, 平均, yeah, 平均. So we 平均. So this is very common. So why don't we say together, average. Average. But sometimes this word gets used in a slightly different way. If you say, what kind of student is he? And the teacher says, well, he's an average student. What kind of feeling do you get from that? So, yeah. A little bit of mama hoo-hoo, a little bit of not great, right? So if someone says, well, he's an average person or average student, it's not like a great, compliment. It just means, well, he's okay. It's not great. Okay, so anyhow, let's read this together. Results from the past 3 years are averaged to create a ranking. Taiwan this year ranked 31st globally with a score of 6.503. Okay, we can say 6.503 or 03, either way is fine. Okay. Behind its ranking of 27th in last year's report. Okay. It says, however, it retained its status as the second happiest place in East Asia, just behind Singapore at number 30 with a score of 6.523. Okay, so it's not too far behind. Let's read this next paragraph with this. This year's report also looked at happiness by age, finding that young Taiwanese aged below 30 were 25th happiest in the world, the highest in Asia. So that kind of surprises me actually, but yeah, okay. So what is this word, the third word here? It says retain. What is to retain? Yeah, to keep. It's simply another way of saying to keep. Yeah, to hold on to. Okay, so but we can say this word. We use this word in many ways. I'll tell you one way this word gets used a lot is if you sometimes you have your company wants to hold on to an employee, or they have somebody who is like a 顾问, and they pay them money so they will keep providing you services. We say we retained him as a company, or we retained her as a consultant. Now, it's interesting because as a 顾问, sometimes you will pay a set amount of money to a 顾问, and then they are on call. They are available to help you. We call that money. We call that a retainer. Okay, so it's retainer, or a retainer fee. Okay, so it's like, let's say I'm not an employee for that company, but that company pays me a certain amount of money, and then whenever they need me, I provide their service to them. Maybe they don't need me, but if they do need me, I'm available. So we call that I'm paid a retainer. It's like, or a retainer fee. Okay, so let's say it together. Retain. Okay, so it held on to its status. Okay, status, I think you know, its position, its situation, its ranking as the second happiest place in East Asia. Okay, and it says below here, okay, so the young people below the age of 30. Okay, anyhow, let's read this. However, it retained its status as the second happiest place in East Asia, just behind Singapore at number 30 with a score of 6.523. This year's report also looked at happiness by age, finding that young Taiwanese aged below 30 were 25th happiest in the world. The highest in East Asia. Okay. It says those aged 60 and above came in at number 34 globally, behind Singapore at number 26 and China at number 30. Okay. The findings suggest that overall, young people are happiest in Taiwan, while older people are the least happy. Okay. I don't know if you agree with that. Yeah, seriously, I would agree with you. I would say that, you know, you hear a lot of, young people, their salaries are too low, they can't get married, they don't find a job they like, I don't know. So if I were to guess, if you were to ask me to guess, I would have said the opposite. I would have said older people are happier and younger people are less happy. But I guess I'm wrong. Yeah, you all look very happy to me. So I know you're not all old. So, but I read somewhere, not just for Taiwan, but in general, I read somewhere that people are happiest as they get older. They get happier as they get older. Maybe because they become more satisfied, or in English we have a funny saying when people talk about as they get older. There's a funny expression. People say. If someone says, "Oh, did you hear about this?" or "Yeah, I want to do this," and someone just says, "Oh, I've been there, I've done that." Okay, basically means I've experienced it all, I've done it all. I've taken care of. I have to worry about it. I've already done those things. So I think sometimes when someone says, "Oh, been there, done that," it means that I've already. That's fine. I don't need to do anything more. I'm happy with where things are, or I've already experienced that, so it's no big deal. Been there, done that. Okay, so I think sometimes older people just think, "Yeah, I've been there, done that, no problem, everything's okay." Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, I guess it's good. I mean, it's good to hear that young people are happy. That's good. Okay, so that's it says here overall, of course, means on altogether in general. Okay. Let's read this together. Those age 60 and above came in at number 34 globally. Behind Singapore at number 26 and China at number 30. These findings suggest that overall, young people are the happiest in Taiwan, while older people are the least happy. Okay. Then this expression here at the beginning, this phrase, the findings suggest, this is a very common expression. When you're looking at the results of a report or a survey or an evaluation, often we say the findings, or we could say the results, okay? So findings are like results. The findings or the results suggest, okay? It means according to these, this is what we think. The findings suggest that whatever, something. So yeah, that's a very common way of putting it. Okay, it says here, looking outside of Asia, the index found rising unhappiness among younger people, causing the U.S. and some large Western European countries to fall down the ranking, while Nordic nations retain their grip on the top. Okay, this expression here, retained, here's that word again, their grip. Okay, what is a grip? Yeah, so what is a grip? What does that normally mean? Something to grab something. So I'll tell you, sometimes when you shake somebody's hand and their handshake is very strong, and you say, wow, you have a very firm grip. Okay, it means that the strength of your hand holding something is very strong. Okay, or you can say he gripped his suitcase. If he's carrying a suitcase and he grips it, or she gripped his hand. Okay, so it means to hold something very strongly. Okay, it can be a verb, 动词, like to grip something, or you can say he has a strong grip. Means that his has a lot of power in his hand. So it's in the West, well, I should say in America. I don't know about the rest of the Western, but I know in the United States, we are taught from a very young age that when you meet somebody and you shake their hand, you should have a firm grip. Okay, firm, strong, firm grip. Of course, don't go crazy, but but I think that's the idea. It's supposed to show that you're confident, maybe sincere. And so I always teach people who are not Americans, like, I don't know, even young people from Taiwan. If you do meet somebody from the United States and you shake their hand, you should have a firm grip. Because if you're kind of like this, they're kind of like, what's wrong with this person? It doesn't give them a feeling of confidence. So in the West, I keep saying the West, but I don't know about Europe. I know the United States. In the United States, we say a firm grip and look somebody in the eye when you speak to them. That you're supposed to, I know in other countries and cultures, if you just look at people in the eye, it might be aggressive or challenging or something like that. But in America, we believe that when you talk to somebody, you should look them in the eye because it shows you're honest, you're confident, right? But if you're kind of looking away or looking down, then maybe you're not confident or you're not honest. Yeah. So anyhow, if you ever meet somebody from America, you know what to do. Have a firm grip. Okay. So why don't we say yes? Sexual harassment, right? Now, I will say this though. Even in the United States, if you're shaking hands with a woman, you wouldn't go too hard on the hands. Of course, it would be firm, but not like I think men are like let's see who's stronger. But for women, you wouldn't go too hard on the handshake. So yeah, firm, but not like crazy strong. Yeah. So yeah. But so anyhow, that's just a custom. But there's another expression that I associate with this word grip. If someone's getting overly excited or they're getting upset about something, or they're too worried about something, often we say, get a grip. Get G-E-T, get a grip, or get a grip on yourself. It means control yourself. Don't get too excited, or don't start going crazy, you know. So, you know, if you see somebody and they're getting upset and they're starting to shout, or they're getting really too emotional, and someone says, get a grip, or get a grip on yourself, it means keep yourself under control. You know, stop getting overly excited. So that's more like to get control over your emotions, okay? So that's another expression I see this word grip on. So, but here, of course, like he said earlier, Nordic nations retain their grip. They kept their hold on the top, means that they kept their position, their grip, their hold on that top position, okay? And you know what Nordic means, right? What's Nordic? Yeah, you know, as I understand it, and I could be wrong, but I believe this is true, there's actually a slight difference between Scandinavia and or Scandinavian, okay? So Scandinavia is a word we hear a lot. Scandinavia, and of course you can add an N to the D. Oh yeah, maybe you're right, Scandinavia. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so Scandinavia refers to three specific countries. What countries are those? Sweden, yeah. Denmark, and not Finland, Norway. Okay, so interesting enough, Finland is not included among the Scandinavian countries. However, Nordic countries refers to Northern European countries. So Finland would be a Nordic country, but it's not technically a Scandinavian country. Oh yes, you're right. So Iceland, there's 4 countries. Iceland, Bingdal, yeah. So yeah, it's Norway, Iceland, Denmark, and Sweden are Scandinavian countries. But I've never seen Finland included in that list. But if you want to talk about Nordic countries, I believe you can include Finland. For some reason. It's kind of, I don't know. It could be the language, because I believe there's more of a close relation. The Finnish language is completely different from other European languages. It actually has some, I've heard it has some Asian, there's even some Asian or middle, I don't know. It's a very unusual language. What? Okay. Maybe. I'm no expert. Yeah. I have a lot of friends who are from Finland, and their language is very difficult to, it's hard. It seems like a difficult language to learn. But anyhow, so why don't we say together Nordic. And then this word, this is the means, the name, Scandinavia. And then as a 形容词, Scandinavian. Okay, let's read this together then. Looking outside of Asia, the index found rising unhappiness among younger people, causing the U.S. and some larger Western European countries let's say it last part again. Large Western European countries to fall down the ranking, while Nordic nations retain their grip on the top. Okay. So index, I think you know this word index. It means like a scale, like a ranking. We say the index. Just like we have a stock index, right? You look at the stock market, sometimes they talk about an index. It's a list of companies that they use to judge the stock market. They don't look at every company. They look at an index of companies. Okay, so here it says Finland remained in the top spot with an average score of 7.741, followed closely by Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden, while Afghanistan and Lebanon held the bottom two spots with scores of 1.721 and 2.707 respectively. Okay, respectively, you know what respectively means, right? Yeah, so it means that this is for this one, and this is for this one. The first one's for the first one, the second's. So we say respectively when we do that kind of comparison. So Finland, I read this somewhere else too. It's still the happiest country in the world, which yeah, it's great. It's funny because my Finnish friends, it's funny, they don't seem to be really strongly emotional people, but I guess they're happy, right? So and then we have Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, which are all Scandinavian countries. Afghanistan, I think you know where that is. We've talked about that in the past. What is it? Afuhan, right? In fact, I'm very surprised that they even had a survey in Afghanistan, that they could go there and ask people. And then, do you know where Lebanon is? Yeah, it's just north of Israel. The what? Oh, yeah. Well, I think it was the city of Lebanon, the capital, which is Beirut, right? Beirut, B-E-I-R-U-T. Beirut used to be called the Paris of the Middle East, I believe. And then there was all these wars and fighting and civil war. And unfortunately, yeah. But Lebanon, yeah. Okay, so why don't we say together, Lebanon, Lebanon, Afghanistan, okay, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden. Yeah, these are all big, well-known countries. Well, not big countries, well-known countries. In recent years, I've had a good number of Taiwanese friends who have gone to Iceland, Bingdao. I don't know why. It seems like Iceland has suddenly become a popular destination for Taiwanese. Okay, so let's read this. Finland remained in the top spot. Remained in the top spot. With an average score of 7.741. Followed closely by Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden. While Afghanistan and Lebanon held the bottom two spots with scores of 1.721 and 2.707 respectively. Okay. Okay, so here they talk about kind of where this is related to. It says, in broad terms, the rankings are loosely correlated with countries' prosperity, but other factors such as life expectancy, social bonds, personal freedom, and corruption appear to influence individuals' assessments as well. Okay, so in broad terms, what does that mean? What would be another way of saying that? In general terms, it means in general, okay? Broad means very wide, right? So when we say in broad terms, it means in general. If we look at sometimes we say the big picture, overall. That would be another way of saying overall, or in broad terms, or in general, okay? The rankings, this position, are loosely correlated. Now, what's this word correlated with? Or for a mean, so we say correlation. Yeah, it means basically in relationship with, okay? It's related to. So if you can say, I don't see, what will we say? The air pollution is correlated with the industrial development of a country. So how much industry we have is correlated with air pollution. There's a connection there. There's a relationship, okay? So correlated with, that's the way we usually say it. Something is correlated with something else. But we could say also the correlation. So it'd be CORRELATION. There's a correlation between this and this, okay? So we could say there's a correlation between these rankings and countries' prosperity. Does everybody understand that? So we can say a correlation between this and this, or we can say this is correlated with something. That's the way we use that. Okay, so why don't we say this together? Correlated with. Correlated with. And then correlation between. Correlation between. Okay, so loosely, of course, means there's not a really strong connection, but there's a kind of a general connection, a loose connection. Okay, so loosely correlated with countries' prosperity. So in general, kind of, if you look at how prosperous, you know what prosperity is, right? How do we say in Chinese? Yeah, it means like you have, well, money. Yeah, prosperity is money usually. There's money, there's wealth, okay? So if you say, like at 农历过年, people say, I hope you have a very prosperous year, or I wish you lots of prosperity in the new year. It means, good fortune, so it means, yeah, money or wealth or, success, financial success. Okay, so there's a loose connection between how much wealth or money a country has, how well they're doing financially or economically, and this happiness. So why don't we say together, prosperity. Prosperity. And then that's a noun, of course, means. But if we want to turn this into a 形容词, it becomes prosper, R-O-U-S, R-O-U-S, prosperous. Okay, let's say it again, prosperous. Prosperous. So if we said, oh, Taiwan is a very prosperous country, it means it's successful financially. There's money here. Okay, so prosperity, and then we have, but other factors, there's other reasons, or other factors, such as what? Life expectancy. What's life expectancy mean? Yeah, so life expectancy means how long do you expect to live, okay? And often we say average life expectancy. So we might say the average life expectancy in I don't know, the United States for men is, I don't know what it is now, 78 or 7, I don't know what it is. But anyhow, for women, it's usually a little bit higher. So it's just how long do they expect to live. So why don't we say together, life expectancy. Life expectancy. Okay, the second word here is, or expression is social bonds. What would be another word for bond? Yeah, connection. So you can say, we have a very strong bond in our family, or there's a very strong bond between us, good, strong connection, okay? Yeah, relatives, your best friends. So social bonds would be social connections. Like basically we say sometimes your social life, right? You have a good social life, you have a lot of friends, you have people you can go hang out with, so yeah, social connections. Why don't we say together, social bonds? Social bonds. What's another meaning for bond? Does anyone know? Yeah. Well, no, but that's a bond. Yeah. But yeah. But you just said, what is it? 债券, right? So if you buy bonds from your bank, it's a form of investment. Governments have bonds. There's companies have bonds. It's another word. But it's very funny. There is a word that's very similar, and you said marriage. Maybe some people think about it this way. Bondage. Bondage is another word for like to tie someone up so they can't move, right? This word is connected with the word slavery. Okay? You know what slavery is, right? A slave is what did it say? 奴隶, right? Huh? What? 奴隶, yeah. So bondage, if someone is held in bondage, it means they're as a slave. They can't, they can't move. They're tied up. Okay. So yeah. So some people, you said a marriage is the bonds of marriage, but we could also say some people might think the bondage of marriage. Yeah, the good and the bad. Okay, so anyhow, yeah, bondage is not usually a good word because it's like people are enslaved. They have no freedom. Okay, so we could say it could get used in many ways. So why don't we say together bondage, bondage, slavery, slavery. Okay, so here we have life expectancy, social bonds, personal freedom. I mean, that's, I think, pretty easy to understand. And corruption, which is interesting. What's corruption? Hanwu, right? Okay, so obviously that's a negative thing. So corruption could influence your personal happiness. I guess if your country has lots of corruption, then it could reduce your personal happiness. I don't think it would. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To get the best of it. What do you mean? I mean, how to enjoy it? Wow, that's hard to explain. I mean, I think it depends on the person, right? I personally like, how do we say, independent travel, 自由行, right? So I just buy a guidebook. I'm very old-fashioned. I buy a guidebook. Some people go online, okay? But I think often you do. A lot of Western countries, the public transportation is not very good. Now, Europe might be different. Europe actually has better public transportation than the US does in general. So if you're in Europe, I think that's where it's good to have a guidebook or a website to look at, because that will tell you, right? It'll say, no, the buses are terrible, or there's no subway, so you need to rent a car. But maybe you go to another place where the public transportation is great, and then it would be it'd be a waste of money to rent a car. So I think that's where you have to do good research and know before you go what's going on, you know? I mean, I think a good guide, website, or book will also tell you other basic things like safety, right? That's one thing that people are concerned about when they travel is it safe? You know, can I just walk anywhere? Do I have to be careful about something? And that's important. So, you know, it's interesting, or it's actually kind of sad. I've recently, in the last several years, I've read many stories about travelers, especially women, who think they can go anywhere, right? They want to travel the world. They want to go around the world, and they have their websites and their blogs or vlogs or whatever. And it's this nice, you know, they're very positive about stuff. But some of them get in tragedy, right? They get, you know, murdered or attacked or whatever. But I think it's because, to be honest, they did not do good research, or they researched things and they ignored the things, you know. So they went to certain countries where it wasn't not safe for women to travel by themselves. So I think that, you know, no matter if you're a man or a woman, it's good to always to understand what's going on, to do your homework, your 功课, and then to pay attention to those things, to be prepared. Because if you're not prepared, that's when you run into trouble, or if you're not paying attention. So I'll give you an example. I was recently, this past week, I was working with a young Taiwanese woman, younger Taiwanese woman who's moving to the U.S. to work, right? And her main concern was safety, okay? So, but I'm glad that she asked that question, right? Because if she didn't ask the question, then that means she's not thinking about it. So she was thinking about it, and you know, I think I gave her good advice. The city she's moving to is a very safe city, but I told her, I said, when you're there, you have to pay attention wherever you go. Taiwan is such a safe place. I mean, and that's true. I mean, you ask anybody, you do look at surveys. The problem with Taiwan being such a safe place is that when Taiwanese go to other countries, often they assume that other countries are the same, right? So, you know, you go to Starbucks here and people are working on their BG now, and then they go use the restroom and they just leave their computer on the table, right? And they leave their bag there. And I'm just like, you couldn't do that in other countries, right? Even in the US, if you come back, your stuff might be gone, right? So you have to be careful about these things when you travel. So yeah, I think just do your research. That's the key. You know, every country's a little bit different. And yeah, many countries it's good to drive your own car. because it's just easier to see stuff. But then there's other countries where you probably don't want to drive a car because, there's a lot of trouble with it. Yeah, I don't know if you watched the news recently. There's this volcano Huasan eruption right now in Iceland, and there's all this lava, they're having to evacuate towns because of this volcano eruption, and they have that, I think, quite a bit. So, I don't think it's dangerous. I mean, people can go there and see it. It's not like it's going to threaten your life. I mean, but I think you have to be aware of these things. So, yeah, I've heard Iceland's really beautiful. It's a pretty amazing place. I've only been there one time, and it was only in the airport. My airplane flew in. I got off the airplane. I waited in the airport for 1 or 2 hours, and then we kept going. So I didn't get to really see Iceland. So, yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this together. In broad terms, the rankings are loosely correlated with. Let's say those last 3 words. Loosely correlated with. Country's prosperity. Prosperity. But other factors, such as life expectancy, social bonds, personal freedom, and corruption, appear to influence individuals' assessments as well. Of course, as well means also, right? Also, as well. I do this as well. I'm going to, yeah. Okay, so this is, a lot of things. Yeah, so if someone asks you, they say, what is the life expectancy or the average life expectancy in your country? That means how an average, 平均, what is the average lifespan? Sometimes we say lifespan, S-P-A-N, means how long do people live, okay? Actually, I've been getting a lot of articles about this recently because they talk about, I don't know if they use this in Chinese, if they have the same phrase, but now you read a lot of articles about blue zone countries. Blue, 蓝色, blue zone, like it's basically the countries where the people live, the life expectancy is super long. They're the longest life expectancy countries in the world, or places in the world. And there's certain places where people live a really long time. One of them is very, very close to Taiwan. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a place right next to Taiwan that has one of the longest life expectancies in the world. Not more specific. Yes, Okinawa. Yeah. So there's many articles in America now about Okinawans people. They're like, what do they eat? What do they do? How come they live so long? Well, okay, so maybe it's good Taiwanese people live longer, but yeah, I've heard there's certain things that they do like they eat a lot of seaweed, hai tai, and they don't eat much meat, and they eat a lot of fish, but also another thing they talk about is their social life is their social bonds are very strong. They have Okinawans have a really strong social structure, so people have this good interaction with other people. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can go study Okinawa and see what they're doing over there. But yeah, it's very interesting now. There's also some places in Europe, Ojo, like I think like Italy or somewhere else where people live a long time, and so they kind of look at their food, their diet, what they eat, their social life, their families, their exercise. What do they do? Are they active? Do they like to go out and walk around? What do they do? People are trying to understand that. So yeah. Okay. Yes. Okinawa? Yeah. It's nowadays in Taiwan, they say, what's it? Tongshan, right? Yeah. It used to be, people used to say Liuqiu, but yeah. So Okinawa. Ryukyu is the whole island chain. Like Okinawa is one island, right? But then there's this island chain, and it's called the Yeah. R-Y. No, it's spelled with a K. Ryukyu. Oh, K-Y? Okay, maybe. I'm not sure. Ryukyu. I don't know. I'd have to. Anyhow, I didn't think there was a Y there, but you can go Google it. But yeah, it's a Ryukyu Islands are the island chain. And then Okinawa is the biggest island in that group. So yeah. I don't know if I told you, my stepmother is from Okinawa. So yeah. I don't know, maybe I never shared this. My birth mother passed away when I was 14. But my father remarried, and she's from Okinawa. And I've discovered that Okinawans are very different from other Japanese. They're much more outgoing, you know. Japanese are a little bit, we say, reserved, right? They don't always, show their emotions, or they're not as easy to maybe get to know or open up to other people or strangers. But Okinawans are very outgoing. They're very... Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they just seem very happy, much more happy, outgoing people. I shouldn't say happy. I mean, who knows? Happy's in your heart, but they just seem very outgoing. So yeah, I've been to Okinawa several times, and I really enjoy it. It's a great country. The one thing I'm waiting for, and many of my friends keep talking about this, is before Iching, there was a direct flight from Taichung to Okinawa, but it hasn't started up again. It hasn't restarted yet. So all my friends are waiting for that flight. They're like, when is Taichung going to have a direct flight to Okinawa? Because if you can fly there directly, it's a great place. It's got good beaches, and the weather's nice, and it's good food, and yeah, it's a good place. Yeah. Yeah. Lush. So no, lush has a different idea. Lush means that it's very green. So if we can say Taiwan is a lush island, right? There's a lot of grass and trees and plants. So when we say something is lush, it usually means there's lots of greenery. And usually that there's an idea. Of course, when you see a place that's very lush, you think of it as being very naturally. The nature is very healthy. There's lots of nature. It's very, yeah. So it's not really, no, we wouldn't use it as a prosperous. No, we wouldn't use it usually for a person. But I will teach you another word that's very similar to the word lush. And in fact, it's almost the same meaning. It's a good word. Verdant. Okay. So if you hear about we say Taiwan is a verdant island, or Taiwan is a lush. Let me write that down too. A lush island. Okay. Pretty much the same meaning. It means very green, and everything grows very quickly, right? In Taiwan, if you plant something, it will probably grow very quickly. Another place like that is Hawaii. Hawaii, you plant anything, it grows very quickly because the weather, the climate is perfect for growing plants. Okay, so yeah, those are good words. So why don't we say together, verdant, lush, lush. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So these are ways to look at this happiness index. Let's see here. Okay, well, I think we can go to a different story. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, I wanted to go to a different story that talks also about happiness. First of all, are there any other questions about this article? Okay, yeah. Well, kernel, kernel is, when you say a full kernel, well, I think that what they're talking about is there's another kind of a lower rank called kernel. lieutenant is actually a rank by itself. In the U.S., the lieutenant has a bar. Can be a gold bar or a silver bar. But a colonel has an eagle, right? It's like an eagle. Eagle, Lao Ying, right? Sorry, that's a terrible picture. But yeah. Yeah, so lieutenant colonel is the first you're a lieutenant colonel, and then you become a full colonel. You get the full rank of colonel. So yeah, so it's major comes before that. Yeah. So we have, and then before that you have captain, right? So we have lieutenant. Actually, we have second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, and then full colonel. And then, of course, after that, you have general. Brigadier general is the lowest rank. That's 1 star. Yeah. So yeah, there's all these different ranks. These are what, we learn the word rank, right? So we say these are military ranks. Okay. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So yeah, it's just a way of putting it. Yeah, 1 star brigadier general, and then I think it's lieutenant general, 2 stars, and it goes up from there. Yeah. Okay. So any other questions? Anything else? Okay. So I want to go to another story I saw. Another story that I saw today that is also kind of, I was surprised. It's a very similar type of story, but this one's like the opposite of what we just read. So sometimes the news contradicts each other, or it's not all the news agrees with news stories agree with each other. So I when I saw this one, I thought, oh, okay, this one's like the opposite of the other story we read. So it says here, young less happy than older generations report. Okay, so here's what I thought. When if you told me, so it says here, young less happy than older generations report, according to report. Living online, the findings are a red flag that young people are really struggling, the U.S. Surgeon General said, while calling for legislation on social media platforms. Now, I find this article very, very interesting because it's connecting the happiness or the reduced happiness to social media,社群媒体, and I think this is very true. I hear there's a new expression. People talk about Facebook depression, right? And I don't know if you've heard of that before, but the reason people feel depressed, the word depressed, right? The reason they feel depressed is because they look at other people's Facebook and they feel like everyone else is living a better life than they are, right? Everyone's happy, everyone's going on vacation, everyone has a great life, and then they think, my life is terrible, right? So they of course, what people put on Facebook often is their best side, right? Their best life, their best pictures, they look happy. And so when other people think, well, why is my life not as good as other people's? So anyhow, I'm curious about this story. So it says here, these findings, okay, these results, when we say finding, it means results, are a red flag that young people are really struggling. Now, this is a very interesting expression. If you say something is a red flag, what does that mean? Yeah, it means a warning. If you say this is a warning, a red flag means something you should be careful about, a warning to you. So if you say, if you look at, let's say there's a survey, 调查, or a statistic or some data, and you say, wow, that's a red flag for us. We need to be careful. We need to change something, or a red flag that there's a real problem, okay? So that word red flag means warning, okay? So this is a warning that young people are really struggling. Now, do you know what? I don't know if Taiwan has this position. The U.S. government, the central government, 中央政府, has a Surgeon General. I don't know if anyone knows this, but in America, when you buy cigarettes, or you have a cigarettes 香烟的广告 advertisement, there's a warning, and it always says the Surgeon General warns you that this. So the Surgeon General is like the highest medical official in the country, okay? So they're like the they're not really a surgeon. I don't know where they use this word. I mean, it doesn't mean they're, a surgeon usually is someone does 开刀, right? But this title doesn't mean they're a surgeon. It means they're like this is a specific title for, in the U.S. government, they're like the highest medical or health official in the country. And it's just like top position. Does everybody understand that? It's a little bit, does Taiwan have something similar or not? I know they have the, 卫生局 or whatever, 卫生, or something, but I don't know if it's the same as a Surgeon General. Anyhow, let's read this together. Surgeon General. Surgeon General. Okay, so let's read this. Let's see what they're talking about. It says, young people are becoming less happy than older generations as they experience the equivalent of a midlife crisis. Global research released yesterday revealed, as the U.S. top doctor warned that young people are really struggling. Okay, so obviously older generations, older people, the equivalent of is, what's this word equivalent mean? The equal to or the same as, okay? So if you say this is the equivalent of that, it means it's the same, it's equal to, okay? You can see the word, it looks like equal, E-Q-U-I, well, be equal, A-L. But yeah, equivalent to. Okay, so why don't we say together, equivalent. Equivalent. Now this is very interesting. It's the same as a midlife crisis. Does everybody, this is a very common expression. What is a midlife crisis? Yeah, so there's obviously a term in Chinese. Basically, men and women, when they get to a certain age, they feel like, my life is half over. Now what? Or what do I do now? Or they want to feel young again. People sometimes, I mean, it's a real thing. It really happens. But sometimes people joke about it. If you see an older man buying a sports car, right? You think, oh, he's going through midlife crisis. He wants to feel young again. So yeah, why don't we say together, midlife crisis. Midlife crisis. Okay. So that's so here you can see it says the U.S. top doctor. So it's the Surgeon General. That's the position. Okay, so let's read this. Young people are becoming less happy than older generations as they experience the equivalent of a midlife crisis. Global research released yesterday revealed as the U.S. top doctor warned that young people are really struggling. Really struggling. Okay, you know what struggle means, right? If you're fighting or it's very difficult, you say, I'm struggling with my homework, or I'm struggling with that friendship, or whatever. Okay, so it says here, allowing children to use social media was like giving them medicine that is not proven to be safe. U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said, adding that the failure of governments to better regulate social media in the past few years was insane. Okay, so that's very strong words, right? So he's saying allowing kids to use social media is like giving them medicine that is not proven to be safe. It's not, if you of course you normally wouldn't give children medicine, just it's not safe. So he's saying that's the same thing. Adding that the failure of governments to regulate, what's another word for regulate? Monitor, or what else? This word here, R-E-G-U-L-A-T, control. I think that's a good word, control. To monitor, it's more about to control, because monitor means to watch, right? But if you regulate something, you actually control it or limit it, okay? So you could limit it, you could restrict it, you could control it. So to regulate. Of course, if you have a law or a guideline, we call that a regulation, right? So if you can say, according to government regulations, T-I-O-N-S, we're not allowed to do this, or we're not allowed to do that. Okay? So why don't we say together, regulate. Regulate. Regulation. Regulation. Okay, so he's saying not controlling this or not doing a better job is crazy. It's insane. We should do this, okay? Insane, of course, is crazy, right? If you say he's insane or you're insane, it means you're crazy, okay? Insane is a slightly more logical, not logical, it's a slightly more normal sounding word. Crazy sounds a little bit, if you say, well, that's an insane idea, or that's a crazy idea, it's pretty much the same. Okay, so let's read this together. Allowing children to use social media was like giving them medicine that is not proven to be safe. U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said, adding that the failure of governments to better regulate social media in the past few years was insane. Okay, so it says here, Murthy, okay, there's a mistake here. I think it should be Murthy's with an apostrophe S, Murthy's, okay. Murthy's comments came as new data revealed that young people across North America were now less happy than their elders, with the same historic shift expected to follow in Western Europe. So I don't know, I guess maybe in the past, young people in general were happier than their elders, but here it says, new data revealed that young people across Beijing were now less happy than their elders. So it's a historic shift. It's never happened. This is like making history. We say it's historic. A shift, of course, means a what? Change. Yeah. Yeah, a shift means, to move or to change. Okay, so it's a historic shift expected to follow in Western Europe. So it will be the same there too. Okay, so that's, what? Well, no, it says it's expected. So it says the same historic shift expected to follow means it's expected to follow United States. Yeah, so it'll here's the first place, and then that's going to follow the U.S. Okay, let's read this then. Murthy's comments came as new data revealed that young people across North America were now less happy than their elders. Elders. With the same historic shift expected to follow in Western Europe. Okay, Western Europe. Okay. You know, of course, your elders means people who are older than you, right? It's funny. I'm sure they say this in Taiwan, but they always tell young people, respect your elders, right? Respect the people who are older than you. Yeah. West Europe? You know, I think you could probably say the same. You could use it in the same way. But usually when we talk about a region of a country, we tend to say Eastern or Western with the ERN at the end. You could say West Europe, but yeah, it's almost always written this way. Just like in the United States, we say Eastern United States or Western United States. But it's funny because if you talk about Hai'an, like coast, then we tend to say West Coast or East Coast. So I don't know, it seems to be like the way it's used, it's more common when we talk about a region. But when we say like a coast or something like that, we might just use the word east or west. I think it's just a... Yeah. Yeah, but that's... Menopause is a medical term. Okay, so it's a medical condition or a time of life that women go through. Actually, I've heard they talk about male menopause too. I don't know, but it's a medical term. But midlife crisis is more of a emotional or mental thing. It's in your head, right? It's not your body. It's more about the way you feel, right? So yeah, midlife crisis we can use for men or women, but unless I don't know, who knows what, maybe things are changing. Normally or traditionally, menopause was a female physical condition. Yeah, so. The Surgeon General is appointed. Appointed, yeah. Attorney General is like for those you don't know, Attorney General is like the highest lawyer in the U.S. government. Yeah, he's like but Surgeon General. So we use that word general, Surgeon General, Attorney General. It's like a high, but yeah, Anyhow, I know it's appointed. They don't elect that person. So this is the word she was just talking about, menopause. I don't know how you say it in Chinese. Yeah. So yeah. Why don't we say together menopause? Menopause. Right. Okay. So that's a photo caption. So it says here, declining well-being among under 30s has driven the U.S. out of the top 20 list of happiest nations. This year's World Happiness Report shows. So that's what we were just reading about earlier. Let's read this. It says, after 12 years in which people aged 15 to 24 were measured as being happier than older generations in the U.S., the trend appears to have flipped in 2017. What is a trend? We've talked about this, I think. Yeah, what would be another way of saying a trend? It would be like sometimes we say something is in a trend, or something is in fashion, right? Or it is if you want to use a more lighter word, a fad, F-A-D, fad. There's a fad it's like a trend for doing something. Trend is more of a broad, probably more serious word, right? But if you say right now there's a fad for this, or this is in fashion, it means it's popular, it's something. But if you say a trend can be something like this, right? So we can say the trend is towards young people being the way things are moving, the way things are going, the direction. Maybe that's a good way of saying it. The direction that things are going is young people are becoming less happy than older generations. But sometimes we say this is trending, Trending, trending towards that way, or it's trending that way, or trending means which way are things going, okay? So this trend appears to have flipped. Flip, you know what flip means, right? It means to turn upside down, right? To flip. Like if you're making a omudan, right? You flip it, right? You have the egg on the pan, then you flip it upside down. So here the trend is flipped over. Instead of now it's the opposite. Okay? So why don't we say together flipped? Flipped. Okay. So yeah, it's changing because of this. So it says here declining. Of course, declining means what? Going down, right? So if something is declining, you could say his health is declining. It means his health is going down. Income is declining. Income is going down. The stock market is declining. So why don't we say together declining? Declining. Okay, now we've talked about this word many times. If you decline something, what does that mean? Yes, you refuse it. If someone says, hey, why don't you join me for dinner tonight? And you say, sorry, I need to decline. I have something else going on. Okay, so you decline their invitation. Okay, so declining well-being. Now, well-being is you can see there's a hyphen here. Well-being means your happiness, right? Or how well are things for you, right? So sometimes we might say, I think welfare is more of a general word, like your overall condition, but well-being is more like your happiness, how you feel. Do you feel good? So why don't we say together, well-being? Well-being. And that, of course, is a 名词. Okay. Among under 30s. Now, here's again another word we've hyphenated. Under 30s becomes a noun, a 名词. You know, normally this would be like a description. He is under 30. But we say under 30s means people who are under the age of 30 years old. We could say, or, you know, sometimes we say, there's all kinds of expressions like this. I'll give you another one similar, but if we said he is a 30-something. So we might say that we could turn this into it now. We could say 30-somethings, right? It means someone is in their 30几岁, right? Or 20-somethings, or 40-somethings, whatever. So you could use that as a 30-something generation, or you could simply say 30-somethings, okay, as a noun, just like it says here, under 30s. So it's used, it turns into a noun to describe. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Why don't we say together, under 30s, under 30s, 30-somethings, 30-somethings. So under 30s has driven the U.S. out of the top 20 list, okay? So because the younger people are becoming less happy, the whole U.S. happiness ranking has gone down because of that, okay? So let's read this together. Declining well-being among under 30s has driven the U.S. out of the top 20 list of happiest nations. This year's World Happiness Report showed after 12 years in which people aged 15 to 24 were measured as being happier than older generations in the U.S. The trend appears to have flipped in 2017. Let's say it again, have flipped in 2017. Okay. Okay. So it says here the gap has also narrowed in Western Europe, and the same change could happen in the coming year or two, experts say. Murthy described the report findings as a red flag that young people are really struggling in the U.S. and now increasingly around the world. So he's saying that not only the young people in America, but also around the world, they are struggling, okay? So when we say the gap has narrowed, it means the gap between what? Between, yeah, I think that's what they mean, the gap between the U.S. and Europe in terms of this unhappiness with young people. So the difference, another way of saying gap would be difference, right? The difference is narrowing. So the gap, often we say the gap is widening or expanding, or the gap is narrowing. It's getting less and less of a difference. It's almost the same, okay? Gap is a very, it means the space, right? If you ride the 捷运, when you get on the train, usually the announcement says, please mind the gap, right? It means be careful, there's a space between the platform and the train. So don't fall into that gap or get your foot caught in that gap. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's very hard to restrict social media, right? For young people. I mean, people are smart. Kids are smart, right? If they want to get on social media, they'll find a way, right? I know that you could I think Facebook used to restrict the age that you could open an account, right? I know most young people don't use Facebook anymore. They all use Instagram, IG or something else. But I know they can restrict the age that you can open an account, but I think people can open fake accounts, so they can find other ways to get around that restriction. So yeah, it's very hard to restrict this stuff. But I think it's good to understand why it's happening, you know, and what we maybe. Yeah. But so I think that's something that starts with in the family, with parents teaching their children about that. I know, again, parents can have a limit on what they can do, but I think it's where it starts. I always think the key to happiness is chocolate. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So yeah, it's true though. I eat chocolate every day. I try to eat dark chocolate because I hear that's healthier. So yeah. Okay. You know what we say, when we talk about chocolate and things like that, you know what we call that in English? We call that mood food. Because when you eat something like that makes you happy, it puts you in a good mood, right? It actually improves your feelings, right? So some people, I don't know, for some people it's chocolate. Maybe for some people it's chou doufu. I don't know. Well, then you might get drunk or something. But yeah, I guess it could be a mood food. But there are certain foods that we love, right? And they make us feel. Another word we use for that is comfort food. You know, COMFORT, comfort food. Well, yeah, but when I think of comfort food, it's usually some dish that you enjoyed when you were younger. Maybe your family, your mother or father made it, and whenever you eat it, it makes you feel happy, right? I don't know. I'm trying to think what's my favorite comfort food. I like niu mian. That's a good comfort food. But yeah, maybe something that your parents made when you were a child. Okay, I know. I'll tell you one that many American children really, really love. It's a comfort food, even when they grow up. Is cheese and macaroni, or we say mac and cheese. Do you know what macaroni is? How do you say macaroni? It's a kind of pasta. Yeah, 水管面. So yeah. Actually, people say cheese and macaroni or macaroni and cheese. But many kids just say mac and cheese. That's an A. Yeah, sorry, mac and cheese. We can say cheese macaroni or macaroni and cheese or cheese and macaroni or just mac and cheese. But macaroni is that, what is it, 水管面, right? Oh, okay. Not 水管面, yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah, why don't we say together macaroni? Macaroni and cheese. Yeah, or cheese macaroni. Yeah, have you had that? Have you tried this before? But it's very good. And you can buy it in a box. Like you just buy in America. I've seen it at Jialefu before from America, but you just put the macaroni in the water, you cook it, and then there's a special packet, and you just pour it in there and mix it up, and it's ready. It's easy to make. It's like almost like pao mian, but it takes a little bit longer than pao mian. But usually what I like to do is I add like some vegetables or meat, but I like to use not healthy meat, but like kind of like junk meat, like spam. Lasagna is hard to find. I mean, you have to make it or buy it at a restaurant. You know what spam is? I think I've told you about spam before, right? It's like a lunch meat, right? It comes in a can, you got guanto, and it's very, very, very famous. Okay, I love spam. And so, yeah, spam and cheese macaroni is great. You just take the spam and you cut it up and you throw it in there and cook it together, and it's wonderful. But other people add other things to cheese and macaroni. But this is a very popular comfort food among people, because a lot of parents, when they're cooking for their kids and maybe they're tired, and they come home and they don't want to spend a lot of time, it's easy to make cheese and macaroni, and kids always love it. Okay, so it's a comfort food. Okay, so yeah, it's just kind of fun. Okay, let's read this together then. The gap has also narrowed in Western Europe. Western Europe. And the same change could happen in the coming year or two. Experts say. Murthy described the report findings as a red flag that young people are really struggling. Really struggling in the U.S. and now increasingly around the world. Increasingly around the world. Okay. He said he was still waiting to see data that proved social media platforms were safe for children and adolescents and called for international action to improve real-life social connections for young people. Okay, so does everybody know what this word adolescence means? Yeah, basically, if we want to use a really general word, we would say teenagers, right? People who are like, what, in Chinese we just say 青少年, right? Is that, I think it's the same, right? But yeah, adolescence. Now, when you go through that stage in life, it actually is adolescence with a E-N-C-C-E, adolescence. So you can say right now, you could say adolescence was very difficult time for him. But if you are that person, if you are in adolescence, then you are a adolescent with a T. That's the person, okay? So anyone who is a teenager, we would say an adolescent. Let's say it together, adolescence. Adolescence. Okay, and then of course children be younger than that. Okay, so it appears here that he thinks that one of the reasons, of course, is that children or adolescents need real life social connections, meaning that you don't spend all your time on the computer or on your smartphone looking at social media. You actually go out and you talk to people, you hang out with them, you have fun with them. And I think that's true, right? I think that people need real human interactions with each other. Otherwise, yeah, it's not good. Nature? Oh yeah, I think it's very important. You know, like me, I don't do it. I should do it every week, but I mean, maybe I do it every other week. But I love going up in Taichung. There's places to go hiking, right? And when you're just out there and you're by yourself and you're surrounded by nature, or you could go with a friend, but it's just nice. You get away and it's kind of like gives you a new energy. But I think socialization is very, very important for old people, for young people, for everybody. And I think, you know, I talked earlier about those blue zone countries. It shows that those countries, they have strong social connections. You know, they get together with people, they have friends, they meet almost every day, they hang out with their friends, they have dinner together, they do things with their family. You know, I think that's very, very important. So yeah, for young people, I think this is a key, is not, you know, don't. Yeah, I probably, yeah, I would think that's probably true. So yeah. Okay, so let's read this then. He said he was still waiting to see data that proves social media platforms were safe for children and adolescents and called for international action to improve real-life social connections for young people. Okay, I forgot to mention, I think you know this word, platform. What's a platform? Yeah. Now, it could be like a platform, a social media platform like you know, Instagram or Facebook, but it could also be a platform that you stand on, right? If I was speaking to you and there was a stage, that would be a platform, right? Or you go to the Jieyun or the Gaotie and there's a platform that you stand on to wait for the train. Okay, so that's also a platform. It's a place that you stand, or here it's a yeah. So why don't we say together, platforms. Platforms. Now, I think I've shared with you this word has another meaning, like in a 选举, right, an election. You can say, what is his platform, or he's running on this platform. It means your what? Yeah, your position. What are your ideas? What are you promoting for this election? So that's another word or meaning for the word platform. Okay. Okay, this is just a bunch of statistics, but I want to show, there's a word here I do want to focus. Well, let's read this. There's some interesting words here. It says the World Happiness Report, an annual barometer of well-being in 140 nations, coordinated by the University of Oxford's Well-Being Research Center, Gallup, and the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, showed disconcerting drops in youth happiness, especially in North America and Western Europe. Center director and editor of the study, Jean-Emmanuel Deneve said, I don't know how to pronounce that. Okay, so here, this word is a very interesting word. What is a barometer? Not height. Air pressure, yeah. So what do we look at the barometer for? If the barometer starts to fall, what does that tell us? I mean, most of us don't look at a barometer every day. But I guess, but if you're sitting here in Taichung and suddenly the barometer starts to really fall, what does that tell you is going to happen? It's going to rain, or we have a storm coming. So if the weather's really clear and the sky is blue, usually the barometer is really high. And how do you say a barometer in Chinese? Yeah. So we use it. So basically a barometer is to tell you if there's a storm coming, or if the weather's going to be good or bad, okay? So here it says the annual barometer. It's interesting because I don't know why they use barometer. They don't really say thermometer or something else like that. Thermometer, of course, is to measure temperature, right? But barometers measure air pressure. So it's not a real barometer, of course, but basically they're saying this survey measures the level of happiness. Okay, so why don't we say together barometer? Barometer. Okay, so it's the barometer for well-being. Okay, not for air pressure, but for well-being. And then it says here, it's coordinated by all these groups. There's all these different groups. It showed disconcerting drops. Okay, this is a good word. I don't think we've learned it before. What does disconcerting mean? Yeah. So if something is very disconcerting, usually it's something that makes you feel very worried about something, very concerned about something, okay? So if you can say there's been a disconcerting change in his behavior or his action or his personality, it means I'm really worried about him, or there's something wrong here, there's something not good, or something that worries me or concerns me. So it's a good word, disconcerting, okay? If you see an action or you see something that's going on, it makes you feel, worried, basically. So why don't we say together, disconcerting. Disconcerting. Right. So this is worrying. It's not good. It's a disconcerting drop in youth happiness, especially in these two areas in North America, Western Europe, which is interesting because I don't know. I assume this study covers all the countries of the world. So I'm kind of curious to know why North America and Western Europe. I mean, obviously there's the rest of the world uses social media too. So I don't know. It's I'm curious about that. Okay, so anyhow, let's read this. The World Happiness Report, an annual barometer of well-being in 140 nations, coordinated by the University of Oxford's Well-Being Research Center, Gallup, and the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network showed disconcerting drops. Disconcerting drops in youth happiness, especially in North America and Western Europe. Center director and editor of the study, Jean-Emmanuel Deneve said. Okay. There was something here I was looking at. Oh, just a small note. I think you know this. This spelling here is a very British spelling, right? The R-E instead of E-R. Americans like to use E-R, but the British, or British influenced countries or places like Australia or South Africa, you know, former British colonies, I think even like Singapore or Hong Kong, they would use this R-E spelling. So yeah, it's just, yeah. Just like, it's very interesting. I saw something, I noticed something. There's a very famous, I'm sure you all know this company. There's a very famous tire company. They make luntai called Michelin, right? Michelin, right? They do I noticed in Taichung, when they have their centers, you know, their tire centers, maybe you've seen this. Their sign says tire. So that's a very, I believe, a British spelling for, you know, luntai, which, you know, of course, most places they spell tire, right? But if you go down, if I was driving on Wenxing Lu, Sanduan, and there was a big sign. It said Michelin Tire Center, and it used this spelling, which is very interesting. But it's definitely not a spelling we would see in most places, because that's a very, I think even in England today, if you went there, I'm willing to bet, I don't know, it's a good question, but I wonder if they're starting to use this spelling more, but that's very unique. Yeah, so if you ever see that, you know what's going on. Okay, so it says here, to think that in some parts of the world, children are already experiencing the equivalent of a midlife crisis demands immediate policy action, Deneve said. Let's read this next paragraph too. The falling well-being scores for North America in a grouping that includes Australia and New Zealand contradicts a well-established notion that kids start out happier before they slide down the U-curve towards a midlife crisis before well-being picks up again, he said. Okay, there's some interesting things here. So he says here, to think that, it means to imagine that, okay? You could say, who could imagine, or to think that means, you know, this is unusual, right? To think that in some parts of the world, children are already experiencing the equivalent of. So here's that word again. The equivalent of means the same as, the equal to midlife crisis. Now that's, of course, children are not in the midlife, right? They're young. So they're experiencing the same thing as a midlife crisis. Demands immediate policy action. He's saying, of course, if this is happening, then we really need to do something, okay? So then he says here, the falling well-being scores, okay, means the dropping, the declining well-being scores. This is the ranking, the number. For North America, okay, in a grouping, this is, I don't know, I guess North America is grouped with Australia and New Zealand. I don't know why. Contradicts a well-established notion. Now, what's another, I don't know if we've ever learned this word. It's a very common word. What's another word for notion? Idea, okay? You can say, I have the notion to go and do that. I have a notion of you know, quitting my job and taking a long vacation. I don't know. There's many ideas. So a notion is basically an idea that you have. Okay, so why don't we say it together? Notion. Notion. Okay, so this is a well-established idea. Okay, now what does the word contradict mean? To do what? To go against, right? What is a contradiction? It means, a contradiction means kind of like, almost like the opposite of something. It's basically totally 100% against some idea. So if your mother says it's okay to go do this, but your father says no, it's completely dangerous to go do that, then he is contradicting your father is contradicting your mother, right? He's basically saying the opposite of what your mother just said. So, sometimes when you're having an argument with somebody and they say one thing, but then in their argument they say something that has people say, stop contradicting yourself, right? If you say two things that have the opposite meaning, and then someone might say you're contradicting yourself, right? Means you're saying two things that don't agree with each other. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so why don't we say together, contradict. Contradict. And then as a 名词 with a T-I-O-N, contradiction. Contradiction. So this situation, these numbers, contradicts a well-established idea. It means an idea that everyone has. It's an idea that's very common, okay, very widespread. The kids start out happier. They begin happier before they slide down a U curve towards a midlife crisis before the well-being picks up again. So, when we say a U curve, I think you know what I mean, right? You start happy, you go down, then you hit midlife crisis, and then things start getting happier again as you get older, right? That's why we call it a U curve, okay? So, yeah. Sometimes we talk about a V or U curve or W or whatever. There's different shapes, right? Okay, so let's read this, and then I think probably that's all we're going to have time for. Okay, let's read this. The falling well-being scores for North America in a grouping that includes Australia and New Zealand contradicts a well-established notion that kids start out happier before they slide down the U curve towards a midlife crisis before well-being picks up again. He said. Okay, you know what the word slide, of course, means, right? To slide, to slip, to slide. If slide can be, of course, a verb or a noun, right? If you go to many parks, right, you'll see a slide for children, kids. I always find it I think it's very cute how much kids love slides, right? If you have a slide and a bunch of kids, they will use that slide and they'll just keep going down. They'll keep running up and going down that slide over and over again. Although it's funny because I think now around the world, including the U.S., Taiwan, everyone's too cautious, so they keep making the slides less and less steep, right? I think the slide should be steeper so the kids go faster, right? But I know that governments are some parents are very concerned about kids getting hurt. But when I was a kid, the slides were very fast. So anyhow, kids enjoy it. It's fun. Yeah. So anyhow, any questions about this? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where I think you just have to, I say this a lot, and the studies show it. You have to turn off your screens. You know what a screen is, right? You have a screen on your phone. You have a screen on your computer. You have a screen on TV. I think you just have to get away from the screens. I'm guilty. I do this myself. My problem is I spend way too much time watching YouTube videos. It's terrible, right? I get up, I'm doing my work, and I'm like, oh, why don't I go see what's on YouTube, right? And there's all these videos on YouTube, and you know how it is with social media and YouTube. They give you what you want, right? So if you start watching one video and you think it's great, they'll just keep giving you more of those videos, and you're like, oh, this one looks cool, that one looks great. And so there's sometimes where I just have to say, you know what? I'm not even going to look at this. I'm just going to turn my computer off or close it down, and I'm going to go do something else. So I think you just have to get away from your screens. You have to just force yourself not to look at your phone or look at your computer as much, and just do other things. I know it's easier said than done, right? So yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, good. Well, we'll see you in April, I think, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you.